Widower and son found a pregnant girl tied to a fence. They gave her a family. John had been walking down the quiet road with his son Michael, just like they did almost every evening. The sun had begun to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, and a soft breeze rustled through the trees. It was peaceful, almost too peaceful, and John found comfort in these walks. They were his way of feeling close to his late wife, whom he still missed every day. Michael walked beside him, a little faster than his father, kicking small stones along the dirt path, his school bag bouncing against his shoulder. They talked about small things, school, work, the vegetables they had bought from the market. It was routine, ordinary, and safe, or so John thought. As they approached the edge of the town, where the road narrowed and the abandoned fields stretched out, John noticed something unusual. A faint rustling sound came from near an old wooden fence, its paint peeling and nails sticking out in places. At first, John thought it was a stray dog or maybe a cat hiding in the tall grass. But then he saw movement. A small figure crouched and trembling, tied to the fence with thick ropes. John froze for a moment, his heart pounding in his chest. Michael noticed his father stopping and looked up, confusion written all over his face. "Dad, what is it?" he asked, his voice shaky. John didn't answer right away. He felt a sudden rush of fear and protectiveness. The figure was a young girl, no older than 17, with tangled hair falling over her face. Her clothes were dirty and torn in places, and she looked exhausted, hungry, and terrified. Most striking of all was her small, rounded belly. It was clear she was pregnant. The sight, made John's heart ache. How had anyone left her like this, alone and tied to a fence? Who could do such a thing? Without thinking twice, John quickened his pace toward her, with Michael running beside him. "Hey, are you okay?" John called gently, careful not to scare her further. The girl flinched at the sound of his voice, but she didn't move, as if she had given up trying to escape. Her eyes were wide, filled with fear, and she stared at them silently. Michael's voice trembled as he asked, "Dad, should we untie her?" John nodded slowly, kneeling beside her. "Yes, carefully. Let's make sure she's safe first." They worked together to loosen the ropes. The girl didn't resist, but she didn't speak either. When the ropes fell away, she slumped forward, weak and shaking. John gently helped her to sit on the ground, pulling his jacket from his shoulder to wrap around her. Michael went to a nearby stream to fetch some water, while John tried to make her comfortable. "Don't worry," John said softly.
"You're safe now. We're here to help you." The girl's lips quivered as she tried to speak, but no words came out.
She simply nodded, a small, trembling gesture that seemed to say she trusted them, at least a little. John could see the fear in her eyes, but also something else, a spark of hope. Michael returned with the water, offering it to her. "Here, drink. You need it." She took it slowly, holding the cup with shaking hands. John watched her carefully, noticing the bruises on her arms and the dirt on her knees. She had been through something terrible, and it made his chest tighten. He had always known life could be unfair, but seeing it so clearly in front of him was almost too much to bear. "Can you tell us your name?" John asked gently, trying not to rush her. The girl hesitated, her eyes darting around as if she feared someone might be watching them. Finally she whispered, "Sarah." "Sarah," John repeated, smiling softly.
"It's nice to meet you, Sarah. You're safe now."
"We won't let anything happen to you." Michael gave her an encouraging smile, his own fear slowly fading. "Yeah, you don't have to be scared anymore. We'll help you." Sarah's eyes welled up with tears, and she tried to speak again, but the words caught in her throat. John reached out and patted her shoulder gently. "It's okay, Sarah. You don't have to talk if you're not ready. Just know that we're here for you." They stayed there for a few minutes, letting her rest and drink water. The sky had turned darker now, and the soft glow of the sunset was fading. John knew they couldn't leave her here overnight. The thought of leaving her alone in the dark, tied to a fence, made his stomach twist. He looked at Michael, who nodded silently, understanding his father's thoughts. "Come on," John said finally. "Let's get you somewhere safe. We'll figure everything else out after that." Sarah hesitated for a moment, but then, as if sensing their genuine kindness, she allowed them to help her to her feet. She was unsteady, and John supported her carefully as they walked toward their small house at the edge of town. Michael walked beside them, holding her hand to keep her steady. On the way, John couldn't help but ask gently, "Sarah, can you tell us what happened? How did you end up here?" Sarah's eyes filled with tears again, but she shook her head. I don't want to talk about it," she whispered. "Please, just help me." John nodded.
Okay, we don't need to know everything right now.
"Just focus on getting home safely. We'll worry about the rest later." By the time they reached their small, modest house, it was completely dark. The warm light from the windows spilled out onto the porch, a sharp contrast to the cold, lonely fence where they had found her. John opened the door and led Sarah inside, helping her settle into a chair near the fireplace. Michael ran to the kitchen to prepare some tea and toast, while John sat beside her. "You're safe here," John said softly. "No one can hurt you here." Sarah looked around the small, simple house. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean, warm, and welcoming. For the first time in a long time, she felt a small sense of peace. She sat quietly, sipping the tea Michael had brought, listening to the crackling of the fire. The warmth seeped into her body, and for the first time in days, she felt almost human again. John watched her carefully, noticing every tremble, every sigh, every hesitation. He knew it would take time for her to trust them fully, but he also knew that this was the beginning of something important, something life-changing, not just for Sarah, but for him and Michael as well. That night, after Michael had gone to bed, John stayed up by the fire, thinking about the events of the evening. He had found Sarah tied to a fence, alone, scared, and pregnant. And yet, somehow, he felt that finding her was not just a coincidence. It was as if life had given him another chance, a chance to protect, to guide, and to love again. He didn't know what the future held. He didn't know how difficult it would be to help her, to care for her, to support her through the challenges ahead. But he knew one thing for certain. He could not leave her alone. Not now. Not ever. Sarah, sitting quietly in the chair by the fire, closed her eyes for a moment, letting herself feel the warmth and safety of the house. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to hope. Maybe, just maybe, things could be different. Maybe she could have a family again. Maybe she could be cared for, loved, and protected. And in that quiet, flickering light, a fragile bond began to form. A bond of trust, kindness, and the possibility of a new beginning. The next morning, the sunlight streamed through the small curtains of John's house, falling softly on the wooden floor. Sarah stirred in her chair by the fireplace, blinking sleepily as she tried to make sense of her surroundings. For the first time in what felt like forever, she had slept without fear, without trembling at every sound, without wondering if someone would come to hurt her again. It was a strange, unfamiliar feeling, one she wasn't sure she could fully trust. John was already in the kitchen preparing breakfast. The smell of toast and eggs filled the small house. He had been up before dawn, thinking about what they needed to do next. Sarah needed more than temporary safety. She needed food, warmth, and care, but most importantly, she needed someone to believe in her. And John had made a quiet decision in his heart. They would be that someone. "Good morning, Sarah," John said warmly as she walked into the kitchen, her steps cautious but steady. Michael was already seated at the small table, eating toast with butter and honey. He looked up and smiled shyly at her. "Good morning," Sarah replied softly, her voice barely above a whisper. It felt strange to speak so normally, in a home that felt safe. She wasn't sure if she deserved this kindness, but a small part of her wanted to believe it anyway. John gestured toward the chair beside Michael. "Sit. Have some breakfast. You need your strength." Sarah nodded and sat down slowly. The food was simple but warm, and every bite made her feel a little more human, a little more alive. She had been living in fear for so long that the normal routine of eating breakfast, sitting at a table and talking softly with others, seemed almost like a dream. After breakfast, John sat with her, sipping his tea. "Sarah," he began gently, "I know you've been through a lot. And I know it's hard to trust people after everything that's happened. But we want to help you. You don't have to go anywhere else. You don't have to face this alone." Sarah looked down at her hands, fidgeting nervously. I don't even know where to start," she admitted. Her voice shook, but there was honesty in it. Honesty about her fear, her loneliness, and her uncertainty. "You start wherever you feel comfortable," John said softly. "You don't have to tell us everything at once. Just know that we're here for you, and we won't let anything happen to you." Michael, who had been listening quietly, spoke up.
Yeah, Sarah, you can stay here as long as you need. We'll help you with everything. His words were simple, but they carried a sincerity that made Sarah's heart flutter.
For the first time, she felt that maybe someone really did care about her. Over the next few days, life settled into a new rhythm. Sarah began to help Michael with small chores around the house, like sweeping the floor, washing dishes, and even helping John in the garden. She was slow at first, unsure of how to behave in a home where she was safe. But John and Michael were patient. They encouraged her gently, praised her small achievements, and never rushed her. During these quiet moments, Sarah began to open up in small ways. She told them her favorite foods, the books she used to read, and even a little about her childhood. She didn't share everything, not yet, but the walls she had built around herself began to crumble, brick by brick. One afternoon, as the three of them worked in the garden, Michael looked at Sarah and asked, "Do you want to talk about your baby? We can help you get ready. We'll be with you every step of the way." Sarah paused, her hands freezing in the soil. Talking about the baby was terrifying. It reminded her of everything she had been through and the uncertainty of the future. But when she looked at John and Michael, she saw something she hadn't seen in a long time. Genuine care. She nodded slowly. "Okay," she whispered. John smiled reassuringly. "We'll start slow. No pressure. Just take one day at a time." Over the next weeks, John and Michael helped Sarah prepare for her baby. They cleaned a small room in the house, painted the walls a soft yellow, and set up a little crib. Michael found some baby clothes at a local shop, carefully selecting the softest fabrics for the baby's delicate skin. Sarah watched them, overwhelmed by the kindness and care they were showing her. She had never imagined that people could be this generous, this patient, and this loving. As the pregnancy progressed, Sarah experienced both the joys and challenges of impending motherhood. She had never been through this before, and there were days when she felt tired, anxious, and afraid. But John and Michael were always there, helping her with tasks, attending her doctor's appointments, and making sure she was never alone. One rainy evening, Sarah sat by the window, staring at the drops of rain sliding down the glass. She felt a pang of fear and uncertainty. "I'm scared," she admitted softly. John sat beside her, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder.
It's okay to be scared, he said. Total scared.
"It means you care. But remember, you're not alone. We'll face this together, as a family." Michael joined them, wrapping an arm around her.
Yeah, Sarah, we're here for you.
"You don't have to do this alone." Sarah felt tears welling up in her eyes. She had spent so much of her life feeling alone, unwanted, and unloved, and yet here she was, with two people who genuinely cared for her and her baby. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a future where she was safe, supported, and even happy. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Sarah's belly grew rounder, and the little home was filled with a mixture of anticipation, laughter, and love. The bond between Sarah, John, and Michael grew stronger with each passing day. They celebrated small victories: a good doctor's appointment, a new baby outfit, a delicious meal cooked together. And in these moments, Sarah began to feel something she hadn't felt in years: hope. One afternoon, as they sat together in the living room, Michael looked at Sarah and said, "You know, when we first found you, I didn't know what to expect. I was scared too. But now, it feels like you've always been a part of our lives." Sarah smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. "I never thought I'd feel at home anywhere," she admitted. "But with you, I do. I feel safe. I feel like I belong." John felt a lump in his throat. His heart swelled with pride and love for both his son and Sarah. "You do belong," he said softly. "You always have and you always will. You're part of this family now." Evenings became their favorite time of day. After dinner, they would sit by the fire, sharing stories, talking about their dreams, and sometimes just sitting in comfortable silence. Sarah found herself laughing more than she had in years. She started to see life in colors she hadn't noticed before: the golden light of morning, the soft rustle of leaves in the wind, the gentle laughter of a family that cared for her. But it wasn't all easy. There were nights when Sarah cried quietly in her room, overwhelmed by fear and uncertainty. There were moments when John and Michael worried about how they could provide for her and the baby, how they could face the judgment of the outside world. Yet through it all, they never wavered in their support. They faced each challenge together, learning and growing as a family. One day, as Sarah felt her baby move for the first time, she gasped in surprise and joy. Michael held her hand, grinning. "Do you feel that?" he asked. "Yes," Sarah whispered, tears of happiness streaming down her face. "It's amazing." John smiled, his eyes shining with emotion.
That's life, Sarah. That's hope.
"That's our future." And in that small, warm house, filled with love, care, and gentle laughter, Sarah began to truly believe that she had found a home, not just a place to live, but a family that would stand by her, protect her, and love her unconditionally. For the first time in her life, she felt safe enough to dream, to hope, and to trust that the future could be brighter than the past. As weeks turned into months, life in John's small house had settled into a comfortable rhythm, but it was far from perfect. Sarah had begun to adjust to her new life, but there were still moments when fear and doubt crept into her mind. Every ache, every sudden movement of the baby, and every minor difficulty reminded her of the uncertainty that had defined so much of her past. Yet, despite the worries, she slowly started to feel the warmth of the family she had found in John and Michael.
Each morning, Michael would wake early to help John with household chores before school.
Together, they would prepare breakfast, water the garden, and make sure the house was tidy. Sarah began to participate more actively in these routines. She found herself laughing as Michael joked while spilling orange juice on the floor, or as John accidentally dropped a spoon in the sink for the third time that morning. These small, ordinary moments were a kind of magic she hadn't experienced in years. But the true work of building trust was not in chores or routines. It was in the quiet conversations, the gentle reassurances, and the way John and Michael treated her, not as a burden, but as a part of their lives. One afternoon, Sarah and John were sitting on the porch, looking out at the fields beyond the fence. The sun hung low in the sky, casting golden light over the landscape. Sarah hugged her arms around herself, feeling vulnerable. "Do you ever get scared?" she asked quietly, almost afraid of the answer. John looked at her, his face gentle and understanding. "All the time," he admitted.
Being afraid doesn't mean you're weak. It means you care.
"It means you're alive, but it also means you can choose not to let fear control you." Sarah thought about that. She realized she had been letting fear control her life for so long. Fear of being alone, fear of being hurt, fear of not being good enough. But John's words gave her a small spark of courage. She wanted to try, to face her fears, to live differently. Michael, who had been quietly sweeping the porch, joined them. "We'll face it together," he said simply. "Whatever comes, we'll be there for you." That afternoon, something shifted inside Sarah. She began to open up more about her experiences, not all at once, but in small, manageable pieces. She told them about her childhood, about the people she had once trusted but who had let her down, and about the days she had spent feeling invisible and unwanted. John and Michael listened with patience and compassion, never interrupting, never judging. Their quiet support made it possible for her to release some of the pain she had been carrying alone for so long. One evening, Sarah woke up in the middle of the night feeling sharp pain in her back and her belly. She didn't know if it was serious or just a normal part of pregnancy, but panic immediately gripped her. She called out softly, and John, who had been dozing in the living room, was by her side in an instant. "It's okay, Sarah," he whispered, holding her hand. "We'll figure it out. You're not alone." Michael, who had woken up from the noise, brought a warm compress and some water. "We'll help you through this," he said, his voice steady despite his youth. The three of them worked together to make Sarah comfortable. John called her doctor to explain her symptoms and received instructions on what to do. It was a long, stressful night, but Sarah realized something important. For the first time in her life, she didn't have to face her fears alone. There were people who cared for her deeply, who were willing to sacrifice their time and energy to make sure she was safe. That realization filled her with gratitude and a tentative sense of peace. As the weeks passed, Sarah's pregnancy progressed smoothly, and she began to feel the first joyful movements of her baby. Each kick and wiggle made her heart swell with love and wonder. She started talking to the baby aloud, telling stories, singing softly, and even laughing at tiny, imagined conversations. Michael would often join in, placing his hand on her belly and making silly predictions about whether the baby would have his eyes or her smile. John watched these moments with a quiet, proud smile, feeling that his home had transformed into something magical, a true family, not bound by blood but by care and choice. Of course, not everything was easy. Sarah had moments of doubt and sadness, especially when memories of her past resurfaced. There were times she felt guilty for needing so much help, and times when she feared the judgment of the outside world. But John and Michael's consistent support helped her navigate these emotions. John often reminded her it's okay to need help. Everyone does at some point. What matters is that you allow yourself to receive it. Michael, with his youthful honesty, would say, "We're your family now. You don't have to be strong all the time. We'll be strong together." Their home began to feel alive in ways it hadn't before. They celebrated small milestones: a new pair of shoes for Sarah, a favorite meal cooked just right. Even the first time Sarah laughed so hard she cried. They created little traditions, like Sunday walks in the field behind their house, or Friday nights spent watching old movies with popcorn. Sarah began to realize that family wasn't just about being safe. It was about belonging, being loved, and creating memories together. One day, Michael came running into the house, holding a small envelope he had found in the mailbox. "It's from the local community center," he announced. "They're offering a class for expectant mothers. They say it helps with baby care and preparing for labor." "Ah," Sarah hesitated. "I don't know if I can. I've never been around people like that before." "What if they judge me?" John took her hand gently.
We'll go with you. You're not alone, remember?
"It's another step, but we'll take it together." Sarah nodded, feeling a mixture of fear and excitement. It was a big step for her, a sign that she was starting to trust not just John and Michael, but herself. When the day of the class arrived, they went together. John and Michael stayed by her side throughout, helping her ask questions, learn about baby care, and gain confidence in her own abilities. The experience was empowering for Sarah. She realized she was capable of more than she had believed, and for the first time in years, she felt proud of herself, proud of her strength, her courage, and the life growing inside her. Back at home, they continued to prepare for the baby's arrival. John and Michael worked on small improvements around the house, fixing squeaky doors, painting the nursery, and arranging furniture. Sarah helped organize the baby's clothes and blankets, often smiling softly as she imagined the little life she would soon hold in her arms. The house, once quiet and lonely, was now filled with a sense of purpose and anticipation. The bond between Sarah, John, and Michael grew stronger with each passing day. They shared laughter, tears, and quiet moments of reflection. They supported each other through challenges and celebrated even the smallest victories. And in those moments, Sarah began to truly understand what family meant. Not just being together under one roof, but caring for each other, trusting each other, and choosing to stand by each other no matter what. One night, as Sarah lay in bed feeling the baby move gently against her hand, she whispered to John and Michael, who were sitting nearby, "I never thought I'd feel like this, like I belong somewhere. But with you, I do." "Thank you." John smiled, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "You belong here, Sarah, always. You and this baby, you're part of our family, and nothing will ever change that." Michael reached over and squeezed her hand. "We'll face everything together. You're not alone anymore." Sarah closed her eyes, feeling a warmth in her heart she had never experienced before. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe in a future filled with love, safety, and hope. She realized that even though life had been hard and unfair, it had also given her a chance to find people who truly cared for her and to become part of a family that would support her unconditionally. And in that small, warm house, the three of them, Sarah, John, and Michael, continued to grow closer every day. Together, they created a life filled with laughter, care, and quiet joy. They had found strength in each other, and in doing so, they had discovered the true meaning of family, not just in blood, but in love, trust, and choice. As Sarah's pregnancy moved into its final months, life in John's small house grew both busier and more intense. The once quiet home was now alive with preparation and anticipation. Every day brought new challenges, but also small victories and moments of joy. Sarah had grown stronger, more confident, and more connected to John and Michael. Yet she could not ignore the nervous tension that came with the approach of the baby's arrival.